We've seen some pretty incredible powers displayed, some of which that seem unstoppable, but on the other hand, we've also seen some powers which fail to impress, and that's putting it mildly. Today, we're going to be talking about some of the most impressive superpowers in the MCU, from the ones that are impressively bad to the ones that blew us away, and you might be surprised which powerful characters are burdened with seemingly useless abilities. If there's one thing we know about Drax, it's that he's a true warrior. Well, not that it's hard to figure out since his title has the whole The Destroyer in it, but the weird thing about Drax's power is that it's so inconsistent. He talks about being super strong, and we've seen him dispatch enemies with ease, but other times he seems incredibly weak, such as when he tried to stand against Ronan the Accuser on his own. He may be able to jump pretty high, or so he claims, but his strength is definitely nothing to write home about. Even compared to human characters, it seems as though Drax is frequently underpowered. In the comic books, Mantis is an incredibly accomplished martial artist you definitely don't want to mess with. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, well, she's really good at feeling feelings. We definitely appreciate powers that have an aspect of subtlety, and we know not everyone can shoot out blasts of energy or perform grandiose feats of strength, but most of Mantis's powers are pretty underwhelming, including her ability to read people's feelings via physical contact. Plenty of mere mortals can read others, and it's not like the Guardians of the Galaxy are known for their subtlety. Being able to manipulate these emotions is marginally more useful, but again, it still falls short of being truly impressive. Speaking of characters who aren't very outwardly impressive, we have Groot. Although he might look like a big friendly tree, don't let that fool you. Groot has displayed some truly tremendous powers over his time in the MCU. He managed to save all of his fellow Guardians, he's handy in a fight, and he has incredible regenerative abilities. Oh, and he can grow flowers. We love flowers as much as the next person, but when you're talking about superpowers, that one really fails to rank among the top. Still, we have to admit it's kind of cute. Peter Parker's Spidey sense is something that we actually hate having to put down so far on the list of impressive superpowers. It's not that Spidey sense is a bad superpower, it's actually pretty awesome. It's just that it's been criminally underutilized in the MCU so far. In the comic books, Spider-Man is practically clairvoyant in his ability to detect danger. It seems like his Spidey sense is almost always tingling, but this hasn't been the case in the MCU so far. It wasn't really until Avengers Infinity War that he seemed to be ready to utilize this incredible power. Up until that point, he had pretty much been good at detecting when things were flying at him, which is less than impressive. If naming things was a superpower, Odin would definitely rank lower on our list than he already is. He's able to draw energy from something called the Odin Force, and when he's tuckered himself out, he turns in to get some nice, relaxing Odin sleep. Sure, there's a serious upside to this particular kind of snooze, and that's why we consider it a power. It allows Odin to recharge his powers, but it also makes him completely and utterly vulnerable. He even has no idea how long he's going to end up being unconscious when he falls asleep. Unpredictable naps, during which time you're intensely vulnerable, is not a great power, even if you do wake up feeling beyond refreshed. There's no doubt that Scarlet Witch is one of the most powerful characters in the MCU. In fact, her major downfall isn't really her powers at all, but the fact that she often struggles to control them. Although it might surprise you to know that Wanda Maximoff in the MCU is much less volatile than in the comic books, she still has her moments. Earlier, we mentioned that Mantis is able to feel and then manipulate the emotions of others to some extent, but this is something Wanda is even better at. She's able to give others terrible, nightmarish hallucinations, even people as powerful as Thor. However, it's kind of strange that she doesn't use this power more often. There's no shortage of brilliant characters in the MCU. If we include those who disappeared during the decimation, we have Tony Stark, Bruce Banner, Shuri, and Hank Pym, who definitely qualify as actual geniuses. Then there are many other characters who are well above average in terms of intelligence, like Captain America, but not only is Rocket Raccoon brilliant, he's also incredibly resourceful. He's managed to put together some truly incredible gadgets with minimal parts and while under a ton of pressure. Sure, Tony Stark managed to put together a suit while he was trapped in a cave once, but that kind of thing is something Rocket does on the regular. He doesn't need a high-tech lab or unlimited resources to get the job done, and he definitely doesn't need any prosthetic appendages, despite what he might try to tell you. We know that Father of the Year Thanos forced his two daughters, Gamora and Nebula, to fight against each other as a form of training. Nebula never managed to win, which meant her body parts were gradually replaced with cybernetics in an effort to make her stronger. But don't assume this means Nebula is a bad fighter, it's just that Gamora happens to be exceptional. Although being the favorite daughter of Thanos is a dubious honor at best, you don't get there by not being a master fighter. As an assassin, she never failed a mission and was considered one of the most dangerous people in the galaxy. In fact, she's a warrior of such renown that it's strange that she didn't put up more of a fight against Thanos during Infinity War. It's surprisingly easy for characters who don't talk much to steal the show, and that was definitely the case with Goose of Captain Marvel. Although he might look like an ordinary house cat, he's actually an alien known as Florkin. Those terrifying tentacles that you saw coming out of this mouth, that's because Goose's body is actually filled with tons of pocket dimensions in which he can store terrifying things without being harmed. He was even able to swallow and later cough up the Tesseract without any adverse effects. We think it's safe to say the Infinity Stones are probably harmful if swallowed, making this all the more impressive. Sure, it's not the ideal storage space, but you can't say it's not effective. Just because Natasha Romanoff doesn't technically have any superpowers doesn't mean underestimating her is a good idea. She's a master spy, and even Loki admitted to being impressed with how sneaky she can be. Many Marvel movies feature lots of battles and explosions, but don't let that distract you from the value of espionage. Black Widow is able to disguise herself and infiltrate just about any group. Even Nick Fury was impressed by her skills and used her as a benchmark for a lie detector test, trying to make one so powerful that even she couldn't fool it. It's more subtle than some of the other powers on our list, but there are indeed some situations you simply can't punch your way out of. When you stack it up against other abilities in the MCU, it's hard to get super excited about being really good at aiming, but Clint Barton takes marksmanship to the next level. He's so proficient that he was selected to join the Avengers because of his master marksmanship, and he's not just limited to bows and arrows. We've seen him use pretty much everything and aim with devastating accuracy. Clint can even throw Captain America's shield shockingly well. He's able to pinpoint small targets at great distances, which is a great way to destroy large things while remaining safe. This talent is definitely in the work smarter but not harder category, and we approve. Clint Barton must have trained long and hard to hone his marksmanship abilities to such an impressive level, but Tony Stark was able to create a precise targeting system for his Iron Man suit with probably a lot less time and effort. It turns out that there are some benefits to being a genius billionaire after all. Who would have ever guessed? Iron Man is able to aim his weapons with incredible precision instantly, and he also removes the possibility of human error by making the whole thing an automated process. Not only that, but Tony is able to rapidly utilize all of the different projectiles within his suit to an extent even Clint Barton couldn't keep up with. When you think about Black Panther, speed might not be his first skill that comes to mind, but if you think about it, he's able to run at truly impressive speeds, especially compared to the other characters in the MCU. It's estimated that he can run up to 40 miles per hour, which is much faster than the average person. He can zip up staircases like nobody's business and even keep pace with fleeing vehicles. We've even seen him outrun characters like Captain America and the Winter Soldier. Cap may be the pinnacle of physical fitness, but he's still not as fast as T'Challa. This power also coincides well with others that he possesses, including his incredible acrobatics and agility. Everyone knows that, as far as his physiology is concerned, Captain America is perfect. The super soldier serum that he received means every last muscle and every last pearly white tooth is absolutely ideal. But while this is impressive, Cap also has another incredible skill, and that's his ability to strategize. He can quickly and carefully formulate complex battle strategies even in the heat of the moment. Being able to fight enemies one-on-one is great, but Captain America knows the importance of delegating. He might not be as brilliant as Tony Stark or Bruce Banner, but he excels when it comes to strategizing. Captain America is definitely an incredibly useful ally on the battlefield. Many people consider Clint Barton to be the MCU master of arrows, but we think Yondu Udonta was even more impressive. Sure, Hawkeye can fire off arrow after arrow in quick succession, but Yondu can do an exceptional amount of damage with just a single arrow and a song in his heart. One long arrow doesn't seem like much of a weapon, but Yondu's Yaka arrow is something else entirely. This weapon is incredibly lethal, and Yondu has masterful control of it. He's able to wipe out vast amounts of enemies almost instantly with it. Generally, the sort of attacks that cover a lot of ground lack precision, but not this one. Not only can it take down humanoid enemies, but we've seen Yondu use it to rip apart a necrocraft. Obviously, we're not here to talk about Scott Lang's incredible ability to perform close-up magic tricks using sleight of hand. While that's pretty cool, we're more impressed by the whole shrinking and growing thing. Sure, he utilizes technology designed by Hank Pym, but Scott had to go through a lot of training in order to master utilizing it. There was even a training montage about it in Ant-Man. In the comic books, Scott is eventually able to shrink and grow without the suit, and only time will tell if this aspect of his character ever manages to make it into the MCU. Also, as Scott mentions, growing to epic proportions isn't easy on the body. It takes a lot to be able to pull off this move effectively, and even an expert like Scott needs a nap afterwards. In the very first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, we knew that there was something very special about Peter Quill. No, it wasn't just his impeccable taste in music or his knowledge of some of the greatest cinematic achievements of all time. We saw him survive in space for far longer than he should have and hold on to the Power Stone without it destroying him, at least for a period of time. So when it turned out that his father was Ego, a Celestial, it wasn't that surprising. It turns out Star-Lord has some even more incredible powers that we've never seen. The only downside is that they've never manifested before or since. During Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, we saw him utilizing molecular manipulation in order to create something out of nothing. If only he could find a way to incorporate this into his everyday arsenal. Sure, she may be completely and utterly evil, but Hela has always been a person with a plan. She's got people to see and then destroy, as well as places to conquer. Why bother spending time forming friendships and alliances when you can simply reanimate corpses and force them to do your evil bidding? That's just good time management and an incredibly impressive superpower. Hela makes new allies whenever she needs them, quite literally by utilizing necromancy when the situation calls for it. In addition to bringing back vast swaths of the undead, she can also bring back powerful beings like her pet wolf Fenris and her berserker. Apparently, being an ally of Hela means never having to say goodbye for too long. Despite being called the God of Thunder, it's electricity that Thor controls. He's able to conjure and then control massive blasts of energy. For a period of time, he relied on Mjolnir to help him focus his power, but he later learned the true power was inside himself all along. Isn't that sweet? Thor's powers are some of the most incredible in the MCU, and his command of electricity is his most impressive. Not only can he call upon blasts of lightning to smite his foes, but he can also use them to enhance his own attacks. By using this power and channeling it into Stormbreaker, he very nearly defeated Thanos, and he could have if he just aimed for the head! Hey listen, we didn't say being smart was one of his powers. Peter Parker's Spidey sense is pretty cool, but it pales in comparison to Heimdall's Omnisense. Being the gatekeeper to Asgard is a serious task, and there's a reason Heimdall was chosen to fulfill this role. He can use his powers to see and hear anything going on anywhere within the 9 realms. He's able to intercept plots and respond to people calling for him from other worlds. Although this power isn't completely infallible, it's still incredibly impressive. And also incredible is that Heimdall has managed to master his power in order to avoid being constantly overwhelmed by taking in far too much stimuli. Heimdall's power is so amazing that Loki even wondered if there was a time Odin may have feared him. Earlier, we said Groot has way more impressive powers than being able to grow flowers, and now we're going to talk about them. Despite being a giant tree, he's surprisingly resilient, and he's able to shield himself with twigs. If he's injured, he has the incredible ability to regenerate parts of his body. Within just a few hours of having an arm chopped off, Groot can regrow a new one. This makes Groot almost impossible to defeat since he can rapidly heal any injuries he sustains over the course of battle. And even if you do manage to destroy Groot, he can reproduce by planting a piece of himself, so in a way, he'll still live on. We saw this happen at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy, which is how we wound up with the adorable baby Groot and the angst-filled teenage Groot. We know Bruce Banner hasn't always been appreciative of his ability to transform into the Incredible Hulk, but there's no denying that it's an incredibly potent power. For a long time, the major downside to Banner hulking out was the unpredictable nature of the Hulk. Historically, he hasn't been great at smashing just what needs to be smashed and not going on a major rampage, but during Thor Ragnarok, we learned Hulk is capable of speaking, thinking, and even expressing feelings of friendship. Later, in Infinity War, we learned Hulk is also getting tired of bailing out Bruce Banner all the time. Despite his often unpredictable nature, Hulk is still one of the mightiest heroes in the MCU. Poor Loki, he's like the Job Bluth of the MCU. He spent years desperately seeking the approval of his parents, and nobody ever seems to be truly impressed with his illusions. But don't worry, Loki, we see you, and we have to admit you've got some serious skills. Heimdall may have the Omniscience, but this amazing power has been fooled by Loki's wily ways before. At first, it seems like Loki was pretty much only good at fooling Thor, which isn't that impressive of a feat, but soon he was fooling all of Asgard with his masterful impersonation of Odin. In fact, he was able to rule Asgard for a long time with his subjects being none the wiser. Many of Loki's powers may be subtle, but that doesn't mean they're not incredible. Although the insidious Jan Rog tried to convince her not to rely on her powers, we all know how powerful the photon blasts of Captain Marvel can be. Thanks to the Space Stone, she has access to an immense source of cosmic energy, which she can channel into mighty photon blasts. She can punch her way through concrete and spaceships, so you can just imagine what she could do to a weak, squishy human being, and if she doesn't use a direct blast, this force can send out a shockwave strong enough to bring down large numbers of enemies. By channeling her powers effectively, she's able to outright destroy her enemies or simply incapacitate them so they can't fight back. Even though Doctor Strange broke the rules by entering the restricted section of the library, he ended up gaining mastery over one of, if not the single most impressive power in the entire MCU. Thanos made it seem like anyone can just pick up the Time Stone and use it, and perhaps that's true to a certain extent, but we've seen Doctor Strange do some shocking things using this particular Infinity Stone that's simply unparalleled. He managed to trap Dormammu in a time loop and quickly glance over 14,605 futures during Infinity War. Time travel is a hard talent to beat, and we haven't seen anyone better at it than Doctor Strange. 25 sounds like a lot, but when you're talking about Marvel characters and their powers, it's barely a dent. We've talked about some options, but make sure to give us your best picks for the most impressive power and least impressive in the comments section. Now, before you go, make sure to click subscribe for more from CBR. Bye for now.